What if every smiling face behind a summer ice cream truck was actually the devil in disguise? This isn't just horror. This is existential dread in a waffle cone. Welcome to the twisted world of Ice Cream Man. And trust me, sprinkles won't save you.
Welcome back to Top Secret Inc. I'm your host, Thorne Bishop, and today we're deep diving into one of the most twisted horror anthologies to hit comic shops in recent years. We're talking about Ice Cream Man Volume 1 Rainbow Sprinkles, a graphic novel that takes the innocent image of an ice cream truck and turns it into something that will haunt your dreams. This trade paperback collects issues 1 through 4 of this series, and trust me, these aren't your typical superhero stories. Think Tales from the Crypt meets the Twilight Zone, but set in modern suburban America. Each issue tells a completely different story with different characters, but they're all connected by one mysterious figure, Rick, the Ice Cream Man. And spoiler alert, he's not just selling ice cream. He's dealing in human suffering, addiction, loss, and the kind of horror that keeps you up at night.
Before we dive deeper into the mission, let's pull the files on the key players: heroes, villains, rogues, and wildcard operatives. This is the subject profiles. Byron, the boy with a deadly friend. Byron is a young kid living alone in a house filled with secrets and death. His parents are dead, killed by spider bites, and now he's got his own special pet spider named Rupert. This isn't just any spider, though. Rupert is one of the most venomous creatures on the planet, and Byron uses him to protect himself from a world that doesn't understand him. Byron represents childhood innocence twisted by trauma, and his story shows us how isolation and loss can turn someone into something dangerous. The junkie couple, lost souls in rainbow hell. In the second issue, we meet 2 heroin addicts desperately trying to score their next fix. These characters don't get individual names because that's the point. Addiction has stripped away their identities until all that's left is the craving. They represent the opioid crisis that's destroying real communities across America. When they encounter the Ice Cream Man, their already nightmarish existence gets turned up to 11, showing us how addiction creates its own special kind of horror. Buddy, the washed-up rock star. Buddy used to be somebody. He had a hit song back in the 1950s that sold millions of copies, but that was decades ago. Now he's a nobody, drinking himself to sleep every night and wondering where his talent went. Buddy is the ghost of fame past, haunted by his glory days, and desperate for one more chance to feel important. His journey takes him to a psychedelic fantasy world where classic rock characters come to life, but the question is whether any of it is real or just the delusions of a man who can't let go. Joel, the expectant father with doubts. Joel's wife is pregnant with their first child, and he should be happy. Instead, he's terrified. His best friend Chris just died, and now Joel has to give the eulogy at the funeral. When Chris's absent father shows up after 25 years, Joel sees a reflection of his own fears about fatherhood. This story deals with the anxiety of becoming a parent and the fear that you might run away from responsibility, just like the deadbeat dads who came before you. Rick the Ice Cream Man, the devil in a white truck. Rick is the thread connecting all these stories. He appears on the edges of each tale, friendly and smiling, always ready with the perfect frozen treat. But Rick is so much more than he seems. He has supernatural powers, can transform objects with a snap of his fingers, and seems to know exactly what will cause the most suffering. Some hints suggest he might be a werewolf, a demon, or even something worse. Rick represents death, temptation, and the cosmic joke that is human existence. His catchphrase is lickety-split, fast as fast can be. But what he's really saying is that life can change in an instant, usually for the worse.
Picture this: a sweltering summer evening in some nowhere suburban hellscape in the Midwest of America. The sun's dropping like a stone, and here comes this ice cream truck making its final rounds before darkness swallows everything whole. Our boy Rick, the ice cream man, is slinging frozen treats to a lineup of sugar-hungry kids and their sweaty moms when this little dude rolls up, all alone. Rick eyeballs the kid. "Hey, sport, where are your parents at?" Because yeah, this kid looks way too young to be roaming the streets solo as Twilight creeps in. Hard to pin down what decade we're even in here. I mean, if this was the 80s, then no biggie. Kids ran wild back then, but nowadays, a 9 or 10-year-old wandering around town during sundown, that's a goddamn Amber Alert waiting to happen. Anyway, the kid's name is Byron. He puffs his chest and he goes, "Hey, I'm a big boy now." And Rick just shrugs and says, "Well, shit, I can't argue with that." Turns out Byron wants a double scoop of chocolate on a cone. So Rick hooks him up and sends him off his way with a friendly warning. "Get home safe, kiddo. It's getting dark out there." What a stand-up guy that guy Rick is, eh? Yeah. So, Byron's strolling home, whistling some tune, tongue working overtime on that ice cream cone. Meanwhile, the story decides that now is the perfect time for a fun nature lesson about the Brazilian wandering spider. Long story short, this thing is deadly as fuck. If only one of these 8-legged nightmares sinks its fangs into you, you're in for the worst day of your miserable life. Stay the fuck away from them. Yeah, good advice. Byron makes it home, and wait for it, tosses the empty cone right onto the front lawn. Now hold up here. Can we talk about this for a second? That was a waffle cone. And those things are absolutely delicious. And that little psychopath just throws it on the ground like garbage? Do kids not even eat cones anymore? Like they are edible. I know as sure as hell that I eat mine. And why chuck it on your own lawn? Like, your parents are gonna find it, and then you're gonna have to go march your ass back out there and pick it up. I mean, kids now these days. Anyways, Byron reaches the front door and he digs into his pocket, and you think he's going to grab his house keys, but no. He pulls out a clothespin. He clips that sucker right onto his nose before opening the unlocked door. Okay, like that's weird. Like how bad can your house smell? Pretty fucking bad apparently. Inside, there's mail scattered everywhere like confetti, like at the world's shittiest wedding party. Byron bends over to greet his pet spider Rupert. Aw, isn't that cute? Let's hope that's not a Brazilian wandering spider. Byron heads to the kitchen to see his parents, and we see a glimpse of the living room. Looks like a tornado fucked a dumpster fire in here. There's garbage and spoiled food everywhere. And now that probably explains why he's wearing that clothespin. In the kitchen, we find out why Byron really needs the nose clip. His parents are sitting at the kitchen table, dead. Stone cold corpses. Been there for probably a month from the looks of it. Rigor mortis has set in, the flesh is withering away, and their faces are frozen in expressions of pure agony. Yeah, definitely not a good way to go. Okay, so time out here. How fucked up is this kid? You got two dead parents who've clearly been rotting in the kitchen for weeks, and no one knows they're gone? Like, don't they have jobs, responsibilities? You think that someone would have done a wellness check when they both stopped showing up to work? Speaking of which, let's cut to the police station and meet Detective Jolio Kwan. She's an Asian woman in her 30s who's absolutely thrilled with her career choices. Just kidding, she's just miserable as shit right now. She's stuck taking a report from some hysterical woman about a brutal murder of her cat named Padford Butterworth. The woman's giving this incredibly detailed description of the perp's face for a police sketch. But there's only one problem here. She's describing Bigfoot. The cops are having a hell of a time believing this because apparently everyone in this town must be just batshit insane. Then, in a fit of rage, the woman pulls out her cat's skeleton out of her purse, completely stripped of its skin and flesh. The sketch artist drops the pad and screams, "Jesus fucking Christ here." Jolio escorts the old lady out, promising that they'll get back to her in a month or so. The woman's shrieking, but what if it gets the children next? Jolio shuts the door and face palms herself so hard that you can hear it. Yeah, dealing with crackpots all day will definitely do that to you. Okay, so enter Jolio's partner. His name's Briggs. He's holding the artist sketch, Bigfoot and all, shaking his head in disbelief. Both detectives get called into their boss's office. The boss slides 2 photographs across the desk. It's of Tom and Henrietta McAllister, and he wants them to pay a visit to that couple's house. It seems that they've both gone MIA. No response to calls from their employers. Briggs cracks a joke about tax evasion or some kind of overdose. The boss isn't too impressed and cuts him off, and he says, listen, they haven't reported to work in a couple weeks, and there's another problem. He ends up tossing a 3rd photo over. His name is Byron. It looks like they got a kid, and no one knows about his whereabouts either. So now we cut back to Byron, who's wandering through the woods behind some houses. It must be backing into a ravine or something as he's walking. He stumbles across a severed leg of a cat or a coyote or who fucking knows. It's just a leg lying there like someone's leaving some twisted breadcrumb trail. Byron hears something rustling in the forest, branches snapping and footsteps. He turns the corner and there's a guy standing there. His clothes are shredded to hell like some savage animal went to town on him. And the guy stumbles closer and Byron squints. He says, hey, aren't you the ice cream man? And Rick smiles. Well, yes, I am. You want to see something cool? And he gets within arm reach of Byron, snaps his fingers, and boom, there's a double scoop chocolate ice cream cone that magically appears in Byron's hand. Rick leans down, tells him, you shouldn't be wandering in the woods by yourself. It's pretty dangerous out here. Maybe you should head back home to your parents. Kind of getting late. Speechless, Byron just hangs his head in shame. Meanwhile, Jolio and Briggs are driving over to the McAllister house. On the way, we get this lovely monologue about parasites and how we're all slowly being eaten from the inside out. I really fucking hope that this is not real, because that's twisted as hell. Jolio hears Briggs say something completely insane about cockroaches, which makes no sense whatsoever. Turns out, Jolio was just daydreaming about roaches while Briggs was asking her about work documents. Apparently the company's trying to screw them with their benefits and pension plans, which honestly is complete bullshit. They arrive at the house. Briggs mentions his kid's upcoming birthday party and invites Jolio. Apparently, she's a total hermit who never leaves her house when she's off duty, so maybe this will get her to socialize a bit more. As they approach the front door, they notice that the door is actually ajar. It's wide open. They walk in and immediately know something is wrong. There's garbage everywhere. And that smell. Christ. That fucking smell. Something is rotting in this place. Jolio notices the TV is on, blaring loud, and there's a commercial running. Hey, and look who it is. It's our buddy Rick, the ice cream man. He's talking about all these new flavors with that $1 million smile. Briggs enters the kitchen and yells, holy fuck. Jolio, get in here right now. Jolio runs into the stench of rotting flesh that hits her like a sledgehammer. She covers her nose and mouth with her arm, fighting the urge to puke. Looking at the decomposed body, she asks, how long have they been dead? This can't be just a few weeks here. Briggs is about to answer when he screams, ouch, and slaps the back of his neck. What the fuck was that? Something just bit me. He pulls his hand away from his back, and there's a large spider in his palm. Aw, it's Rupert, the family pet. Briggs suddenly starts foaming at the mouth, currently learning his first hard lesson about the adverse effects of being bitten by a Brazilian wandering spider. He drops to the ground convulsing. Jolio hits the floor to help him when she hears the little boy's voice. It's not his fault. It's not Rupert's fault. He just doesn't like adults. There's Byron standing with Rupert sitting calmly in his palm. Jolio stands up slowly, approaching the kid. Hey, we need to get my partner some help now. That spider bite is killing him. Byron shoots back. My parents started feeling sick when Rupert bit them too. Jolio tries to get Byron to put the spider down, but the kid completely panics and bolts out of the house with Rupert. Jolio knows that we need to get that spider to identify the toxin to save Briggs, and now that kid's gone. She chases him out the back door into the forest. The kid's running so hard he loses his shoe. Then she hears a scream for help. She turns the corner to find Byron being held 6 feet up in the air by, holy shit, that thing that murdered Padfoot Butterworth. Remember that crazy old lady's cat? It's a goddamn werewolf. Bigfoot, who knows what the fuck it is. It's got massive claws and there's dead animals scattered all around it. Let's take a guess who's ready for a proper meal now. Something with a little more meat on the bone. The beast is about to bite into that tiny, tender morsel when Jolio whips out her firearm, aims it at its head and shouts, "Drop the kid!" She probably didn't mean that literally, but the Sasquatch thing chucks Byron at her like a fucking paperweight. They both hit the ground hard. The creature starts advancing. Jolio covers Byron with her body, protecting her from the beast. I gotta hand it to her, like even in the face of death, she's still doing her job. The creature's just a couple feet away when it lets out this bellowing scream, and it reaches behind its neck and yanks Rupert off and tosses the spider a few 100 feet away. The beast starts foaming at the mouth and runs off to the woods, leaving them both on the ground. Jolio rolls over onto her back in the grass and asks what the kid's name is. He tells her. She kindly tells the kid to go fuck himself. Probably because this has been the most traumatizing day of her life. About an hour later, police and paramedics swarm the McAllister house. They file a report, death by spider bite. But how? They don't have lethal spiders in this part of America. Jolio asks if they can get the transferring of the spider to forensics for testing. And the officer on tight tells her that spider's MIA. Like, it's nowhere near here by now. Shortly after, we see Rupert making its way from house to house to house, finally being found by Rick, the ice cream man. He picks up the spider off the ground, snaps his fingers, and it transforms into a lovely double scoop of chocolate ice cream cone. This issue ends with Rick flashing his fangs. Ice Cream Man issue number 2. Welcome to a beautiful summer morning in Midwest America. We're about to meet Karen and Jim, your friendly neighborhood heroin junkies, living their best incognito life. The neighbors have no fucking clue what's going on behind those doors. Rise and shine, motherfuckers. Karen wakes up to find good old Jim passed out on the couch, strung out and looking like absolute shit. Actually, scratch that. Let's rewind a minute. The entire house looks like shit. Jim looks like he's gonna die if he doesn't get some drugs or some meds or something in his system ASAP. Karen's doing her best to take care of Jim, but her best is pretty generous word here. Neither of them have had, a proper meal in weeks, and the place probably smells like death took a vacation there and decided to probably stay there permanently. So Karen is rummaging through her purse looking for some meds to help Jim out, but surprise, surprise, they've burned through all of those too. And damn, all they got left is about $30 in cash. $30 fucking dollars. Karen sets down the purse and glances over to the fireplace. And there's a framed photo. She picks it up. It's a slightly younger version of herself and Jim from a couple years back. But you wouldn't believe it was only a couple years ago if they told you. These two hit the drugs so hard they look like they've aged at least a decade and a half in that time. So she gets hit with a flashback, like meeting Jim for the first time at a nightclub. He's dropping some cheesy pickup lines on her. She was actually gorgeous back then, before all the opioids and all the, hooks and needles and stuff like that. Then they're walking through the park like lovebirds. Sweet, right? No, absolutely wrong. Next thing you know, they're doing bumps of cocaine at the park bench while kids are playing on the merry-go-round nearby. Like, what the actual fuck here? Yeah, you heard that right. What a romantic relationship we got here, blowing rails while watching kiddies on the playground. And then, because why not, they decide to get it on for a quickie behind some trees afterwards. Okay, you know what? I need to take that all back. These two were really fucked all the way from the beginning. Flash forward a bit now. Apparently, coke just wasn't doing enough for them anymore. We need to catch them loading up on some syringes here and diving into the hard stuff. Skag, China White, that whole nightmare. So let's have a little life lesson here, people. Heroin is bad. Bad news. If you see it approaching you, you need to turn around and fucking run away. That's it. Problem solved. So now Karen and Jim are higher than shit. Completely obvious that rock bottom is rushing up to meet them like a freight train. Their world is starting to crumble, and it's basically just one fix after another. All that hard work building a home, financial freedom, just flushing it down the toilet. The Candyman's gonna keep calling for that next fix, and you're gonna keep answering. So now let's cut to a scene where we witness Karen and Jim at a family outing. Here we see them tag teaming an old lady for her oxygen tank. Like, whatever happened to like dinner in a movie? Do couples still do that? Like, these two crackheads haul an oxygen tank to a pawn shop and score a couple Benjamins for it. I can only imagine the pawn shop clerk's face when they rolled in trying to get a price on that thing. But hey, come on, they only robbed an old lady. Like, really, did she get hurt? Jim's telling Karen, just stay calm. I'll carry the weight of all of our sins that we're committing together, just so that we can get our next fix. But wait, there's more. Now we jump into some armed robbery, because it wouldn't be a typical day in Pontiac, Michigan if the local convenience store didn't get robbed at gunpoint. You get the picture. They keep committing crimes for more drugs to feed the addiction, selling off everything valuable at home to keep the candy train rolling in. Now, back to reality. Back in the house, Karen's staring at Jim's somewhat lifeless body on the couch. She keeps thinking to herself that they're trading one bad thing for one good thing. And I don't really know how smack qualifies as a good thing, but hey, this is her train of thought and it's not mine, so I'm fine with that. She starts mumbling about this being the last fix they're ever gonna get. She grabs a revolver and stuffs it in her purse. She's thinking that once they get clean, they'll just move down to sunny Arizona. She opens the front door and sunlight floods the living room. It was really dark in there. I mean, you couldn't even tell what time of day it was. She takes one last look at Jim and leaves, closing the door behind her. Now, we're going to jump a few clicks away to another suburb. Looks like a really nice neighborhood. Like we're entering the home of Alice and Phil, an elderly couple in probably their late 70s, I guess. They're having a polite conversation about old age and, the body slowly falling apart. Alice is trying to get Phil to eat his goddamn soup because he talks so much and it keeps getting cold, and Alice keeps getting pissy every time she has to warm that goddamn soup up. Phil goes off on a rant about doctors and medications and surgeries, like there's some kind of conspiracy with big pharma and hospitals, all out to get you when you start collecting your old age pension. Alice lets him know he wouldn't need all those meds if he'd just do the physical therapy after his surgeries. Okay, so let's pause here for a second. If this is what I have to look forward to when I retire, there's no way I'm going to end up a bitter old man like this guy. Alice reminds Phil that he's completely dependent on her, that he wouldn't survive without her around. Then Phil, classy as ever, drops the bomb. Alice, my soup is cold. Again. Okay, now let's jump to sweet Karen. She's walking down the street, checking out every car parked, like as she's passing by to see if the doors are locked. I mean, hey, why not? Could be some cash in there, maybe some expensive sunglasses she can pawn. Then she hears it, that sound. Children's music. She turns the corner to find an ice cream truck parked there. And look at that. No one's in the truck and the keys are in the ignition. That was just a little too easy. Is this just me, or does this entire story give off like major Florida man vibes? Now we got Karen strung out behind the wheel of an ice cream truck, blazing through suburban America. And when I mean through America. We're talking up on the sidewalk, we're talking through white picket fences, we're talking through red lights and heavy traffic. Does this town even have police officers? Because they sure as shit aren't doing anything about this. Karen at this time in her mind is thinking about robbing a bank because, why not? She's got such an inconspicuous getaway vehicle. Who's really going to notice a runaway ice cream truck fleeing the scene of a crime? So she's burning rubber through residential subdivisions, daydreaming about that one bad thing that she could turn into a good thing to save her Jimbo. She's imagining that a little summer home with a white picket fence is waiting for her in sunny Arizona. Now, we jump back to Alice and Phil. Alice just stormed out of the house completely pissed off. The fucking soup is cold. That's all she's thinking. The fucking soup is cold. Phil's doing his best chasing after her, trying to apologize. But you know women, she hasn't heard a word of it yet. She's telling him, get in the car, because all she ever does is slave every day to take care of him, blah, 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 blah. I don't think I'm a petty guy, but is this really what marriage is all about, right? Till death do you part, for better, for worse, in sickness or in health? The whole point of marriage is to have each other as a support system. Anyway, Bill is completely losing the battle here, and he better get his ass into that car quick before she leaves him and doesn't take him to his doctor's appointment. Alice and Phil are now on the road. Bill's doing his damnedest to apologize to her, even trying to blame it on the pain medication. They're crossing an intersection while Phil's pleading for forgiveness when we see an ice cream truck closing the distance from the passenger side car window. Alice takes notice, and it's too late. The ice cream truck just smokes the car. T-bones the passenger front door. Alice screams for Phil, but it's too late. Both vehicles are totaled on the grass, metal scattered, glass everywhere on the road. Phil got somehow ejected from the car in the accident. Alice runs out in shock. Phil's just laying there bleeding. A woman runs up to Alice. Alice pleads for her to call somebody, anybody, ambulance, police, it doesn't matter. The woman decides to pull a gun out of her purse and tells Alice, hey, give me all your money. Hey, that's Karen, our friend. You know, the woman who's planning to move to Arizona. You know, she's always putting her priorities first. Alice looks at Karen's face and calls her a junkie, which is fair because Karen does kind of look a little cracked out. And I wouldn't say that's the weirdest way to start a conversation given our current situation. But hey, you know, her husband is dying, and yeah, you know, so is Karen's husband, right? Karen sticks the gun in Alice's face again and demands the money. Alice starts to snap at her, saying that the police are coming and those sirens are getting louder. Karen's going to jail for murder. Karen has a typical Karen moment, and not being logical about this whole situation, and starts to make life-threatening decisions based on pure emotion. So what does she do? She pulls the trigger. Alice drops to the ground dead, next to her husband. Karen's logic sensors finally fire off, you know, better late than never, and she panics at what she's done and bolts out of there, because now she's responsible for 2 murders. Karen runs all the way back to her house. Remember, that was a couple clicks, right? She busts through the door, yelling at Jimmy to get his ass off the sofa. The cops are coming, and they need to get the flying fuck out of town, like now. She looks to the right of Jimmy, and there's a guy sitting there in a white outfit. Like, fuck, who the fuck is this? A man dressed all in white? The man calmly nods his head at her and tells her that poor old Jimbo doesn't look too great at the moment. And Karen looks at him and goes, who the fuck are you? He politely lets her know that he's the ice cream man, and she borrowed his truck for the time being. Now she realizes she also totaled his truck. He looks over and tells her not to worry about the truck. And then he asks her, I bet you're wondering why I'm here now and how I got into your home. Well, I guess it probably doesn't really matter, considering all these drugs over time have destroyed your ability to function reasonably in society. Personally, I never found the attraction to such things. But I'm here to offer you a little treat. And no, not from my truck. Rick the ice cream man pulls out a little pouch out of his pocket. He lets her know that this is the best shit on this side of the border. The purest of the pure China white. He tosses it over to her and explains, there's only enough in there for one person. You can either use it now, or you can give it to your poor husband. Either way, you better think pretty quick, because I can hear those sirens getting closer to the house now. Then, Rick gets off the couch and quietly leaves the house. Short time later, we cut to a scene with the police and paramedics at that house. 2 detectives are discussing the scene. It's Detective Jolio and her boss. Jolio lets her boss know that there's 2 people overdosing in the house. Looks like the husband has a pulse and the paramedics are going to do their best to keep him alive. As for the woman, she's completely unresponsive. I guess now we know where Karen's loyalties are. The paramedics hit Jimbo with an adrenaline shot and he snaps completely out of it. Looking over at Karen in shock, they tell him there's no hope for her. She died of a lethal overdose. The next scene jumps to Jim sitting at home alone after receiving all of Karen's personal items from the police department. He finds a flyer in a box for a drug rehab clinic. Jim starts to attend rehab, and in the background we get this monologue from Karen about being happy in sunny Arizona. And as for Jim, we can only hope he doesn't fall off the wagon. Okay, before we dive into this clusterfuck, I need to warn you. Out of all the stories in this anthology series, this one is the most fucked up. At one point, I thought I was having an acid flashback while reading it. This shit is trippy. The story kicks off in the early 1950s. There's a band playing on stage called the Rockets. The lead singer's name is Bud Hickey, and the show looks absolutely killer. There's a massive crowd, and the chicks are going absolutely apeshit for this guy. Bud's belting out his current #1 hit. Looks like Bud Hickey is on a steady rotation at every radio station with every DJ across the USA. His song has been sitting at #1 on the Billboard charts for at least the past 14 weeks. Let's give a big round of applause to Bud, the man who brought rock revolution to the world, changing the face of popular music for decades to come, the father of rock and roll. Now, let's jump to the present day, somewhere near Pontiac, Michigan, in some shithole Greasy Spoon diner. There's a couple of young adults sitting at a table with an album by Bud Hickey and the Rockets. The girl tells the boy holding the record that guy sitting over there at the end of the diner is Bud, the actual Bud Hickey. She tells him he's here like every morning at 7 a.m., same routine every single day. The waiter walks up to Bud and asks him if he wants a refill on his coffee. Bud looks up at him and asks the waiter if he's ever heard his song. The waiter looks back at him while filling his cup and says, "For sure, Bud, I remember. It was a great song." Okay, now let's step back for a moment here. If you haven't picked up on it yet, think about it. Bud's here at 7 a.m. every morning, and probably so is that waiter. So it's safe to believe that Bud probably ain't right in the head here. Could be dementia, Alzheimer's, but I'm pretty sure the waiter hears that same question several times a week. Anyway, let's get back to the boy and girl. She spits out that he was a one-hit wonder who changed the world with his music. Elvis was the king of rock and roll, but Bud Hickey made rock and roll popular. I don't know if it's sad or pathetic or just what happens to all of them, but he only had one song. It was so big it overshadowed his entire career. Apparently, he's a raging alcoholic, drinks himself to bed every night, and gets right back to it right after breakfast. Absolutely horrible. His family's all gone. He's all alone by himself. He pretty much is stone broke. All those royalties have completely dried up. He lives in a nasty, broken down home at the edge of town. You know, the one with that broken sailboat in the driveway? The boy is like, "Yeah, I know that house. I thought it was condemned and no one actually lived in it." Hey, isn't that the ice cream man over there with his pushcart? So we see the ice cream man singing a little ditty as he's walking past Bud and asks him if he wants a sweet treat. Bud looks over and randomly asks him if his name is Rick. So here we can kind of tell that Bud may have some more memory issues. Rick cracks a little joke that he goes by many names. Then Bud asks him the million-dollar question if he knows who the father of rock and roll is. And Rick claps back with, "Well, Bud, that's an easy one. The king of rock and roll is Elvis." So Bud gets insulted by this apparently. He's the father of rock. Elvis is just the one that gets all the credit. Bud starts to brag about selling 60 million copies of his single internationally, even recording it over a dozen languages so that all kids across the world will be able to sing and dance along with him. Elvis couldn't even touch those numbers. Then the tone of his voice shifts from anger to sadness. Bud starts to sulk, telling Rick that all that fame disappeared, all the music disappeared. As much as he tried, he just couldn't write another hit. Dozens of songs, all flops. Rick is definitely noticing that this midlife crisis has lasted half a century too long. So then Rick opens up the ice cream cart and hands Bud a large scoop of vanilla on a cone. "On the house, Bud." That should make him feel a little better. Bud takes the cone, and makes his way back home. When we get there, we find the entire house decorated with posters and memorabilia of his past as the first rock and roll star. Sitting down, he starts to emotionally abuse himself, reiterating that he was just a one-trick pony who got lucky and never had any real talent, just at the right place at the right time. On the sofa, there's a copy of his vinyl record. Picking it up, he starts to hear some music coming from somewhere else in the house. Now this is really confusing to him because he knows he lives alone, and he definitely didn't leave the record player on. Bud follows his ears and heads down to the basement, but Bud doesn't recognize the song. Is this something in his mind? A riff? A musical phrase? A motif? Could this be his next hit? Is this what he's been waiting for all these decades? He gets past the door leading to his workshop and opens it up. That must be where the music is coming from. He opens the door, and on the other side appears to be what looks like another universe. Another planet. The sky is green, there's pink dust clouds dancing off the floor. Where the hell is he? This isn't right. Running up to him is a person wearing an astronaut spacesuit. He calls out to Bud, "Finally, you're here. Welcome to the revolution." The astronaut speaks into his telecom device. "Hello, Ruby. I'm in contact with the hitmaker. What's your status?" In his earpiece, a female voice responds, "I'm on my way. I'm being tailed by some drippers. Call evacuation immediately." In the distance, we can see a woman with a big afro riding an absolutely sick Harley, being chased by what I can only describe as ghosts from the Pac-Man video game, but they're like melting. The astronaut tells Bud to hold his specs while he radios in for an evac. Bud looks over and asks, "Are we still in my basement?" The astronaut turns his head towards him, even though through the helmet you can feel his disappointment. He says, "Bud, you are supposed to be our savior. We're fucked. Just stay close to me and look for that big yellow submarine in the sky." Then we hear the astronaut talking to the sub. "This is Major Tom to ground control. Beam us up, Scotty." Ruby on the Harley gets within 50 yards of the massive yellow sub up ahead, and all three of them vaporize from sight. We jump to the scene inside the yellow submarine spaceship. Bud is following Ruby Tuesday, and she's trying to explain to Bud about the Drippers and Mr. Conehead. You know, that evil overlord that they're fighting against? Bud is having a hard time trying to understand the situation, and he's absolutely fascinated that the cruise ship is dressed like sailors from the 1950s. I told you, this story is a bit fucked. Bud starts to repeat all the information he's learned from Ruby Tuesday, and she snaps at him. "He's the guy you're supposed to stop. You're the hitmaker. You're the only one who can do this. Your new song is our only hope." At this point, Bud is flabbergasted. "What do you mean, new song?" Ruby pulls him into a meeting room and introduces him to the team. They're called the Music People. Here, Bud meets Ziggy Stardust, Rocky Raccoon, Eleanor Rigby, Captain Jack, and he's already met Ruby Tuesday and Major Tom. If you're not aware, all of these people in the room have names from very famous songs within the first few decades of rock and roll. Let's not forget that Bud is the hitmaker, the first. Eleanor Rigby opens up a guitar case and pulls out this pimped out Fender Stratocaster. But they actually named it the Hendrix Stratoblaster. There's all kinds of sci-fi shit stuck to it, and it looks like there's some kind of piping or tubing sticking out of it. I can only guess that this is meant to amplify the sound, or it's some kind of ray gun, because, you know, the blaster part of the name. We find out here that the reason Bud was brought to this plane of existence was to play the melody on the Hendrix, to be the hitmaker, to kill the evil Mr. Conehead, to remove him from existence once and for all, to end the tyranny, to be the peacemaker. And what the Music People need from Bud is a hit song. Now, we can see Captain Jack sailing the yellow submarine spaceship over to Harmony City, to the home of Mr. Conehead. In the meantime, Bud is trying to explain to everyone that he just can't do it. He only had one song in him. He spent most of his life trying to make another hit, and it only brings failure after failure. Eleanor Rigby has a shit attack on Bud because people are dying everywhere at the hands of Mr. Conehead and his minions. She tells him to shut his trap and get on the guitar and start writing. They finally arrive at Harmony City. There's a huge temple there in the shape of Mr. Conehead. Look, just look at it. It looks almost like Rick the Ice Cream Man, except the head. It's in the shape of an ice cream cone. They all get Scotty to beam them down to ground level, and they charge in for the attack. The Drippers charge back, and the battle begins. Eleanor's got some handguns, Ruby Tuesday is wielding a blood-red lightsaber, and we find out that the Hendrix Strato Blaster has a built-in ray gun. Unfortunately, it looks like Captain Jack just didn't make it. Major Tom is leading the charge and providing some cover for Bud. Ruby Tuesday takes a big hit and is pummeled. Don't know if she's dead or not yet. Bud keeps running, and you can hear Major Tom yelling, "How's the song coming along, Bud? We can really use it now." But in sheer panic, Bud tells us that it isn't coming out. It's just like it's stuck in his throat or something. Major Tom takes off his helmet to help entice Bud to think, of something quick. Time's running out. In fear, Bud realizes that the man behind the mask is Rick the Ice Cream Man. Then his head shape shifts into an ice cream cone, just like the temple in front of him. Major Tom is Mr. Conehead. Bud starts to hum a melody out of his mouth and points the Strato Blaster at Major Tom. He starts ripping a song on the guitar. Now we cut back to the shithole diner. It's the waiter. He's shaking Bud by the shoulders. Bud must have passed out or fainted at the table. His head was lying on a pile of vanilla ice cream. The waiter's like, Bud, are you okay?" Bud looks over to him. His skin is pale as a white ghost and says, "Did I do it? Did I save the world with my new song?" The waiter takes a deep breath and just shakes his head and tells him, "You had me worried there for a minute, Bud. Let me get you a refill of coffee. This should fix you up." Then we see the boy and the girl from the other side of the diner get up from the table and do a double take of Bud as they head out of the diner, and they don't even notice that giant yellow submarine spaceship overhead. All right, this issue is an interesting one. We're back in the Midwest, suburban America. You got a young black American named Joel. He looks like a fine, upstanding gentleman. Pregnant wife is helping him put on a suit and tie. They've got a beautiful house with a nice car. The inside is furnished very nicely. Looks like these two are doing pretty damn well for themselves. Joel is confiding into his wife that he's very nervous. Apparently a best friend of his has recently passed away. Joel's been asked by the family to deliver a eulogy at the funeral. He's never done this before and he's kind of worried about it. To be fairly honest, he hasn't seen Chris in a couple of years. His wife lets him know that, as we get older, it becomes more difficult to spend time with their friends and life gets, a hold of us. Things get busy with family, careers, and of course, all that other bullshit that life throws at us. Joel mentions to his wife that it's strange because he never even knew that Chris was sick. Dying in your 30s is a tragedy, but you'd think you would have at least known your best friend had something going on. Joel mentions that he wishes she could come along to the funeral to soothe his nerves. She laughs at him and reminds him that it's too late in her pregnancy and she could barely squeeze through the door. Grabbing a Polaroid camera, she takes a picture of her handsome husband before he leaves for the cemetery. The Polaroid camera is quite interesting. We can't really tell what time period we're in here. Polaroids were really popular in the 70s and the 80s, but they've somewhat made a little comeback in the last few years, purely based on nostalgia. I'm going to guess that this story is in the present day only because the car on the driveway looks fairly modern. Joel mentions to his wife that Chris's dad will be there today. Apparently, Joel hasn't seen Chris's dad in about 25 years. I'm taking a wild guess that will be back in elementary school. I'm wondering what happened here, like a separation, divorce, maybe some jail time. At the ceremony, Joel gives an outstanding speech. A lot of references to music and how Chris was somehow some savant musical genius. During the middle of the speech, Joel looks up and sees Chris's dad, about 20 yards away leaning against a tree in street clothes, sparking a cigarette. He's wearing these street clothes, like denim jeans and an untucked shirt to a funeral, kind of strange. He's not even with anyone else during the ceremony. I wonder what shit went down in that house when Joel was a kid. At the end of the ceremony, we see an old family friend of Chris praising Joel for his heartfelt words. She also mentions she knew that he would do a great job. Even as a child, he was always great at articulating his thoughts. She hops into her car and leaves the cemetery. Immediately after she's out of sight, Chris's father comes up to Joel and wraps his arms around him. Joel is shocked and doesn't know what to make of it. He hasn't seen this guy for a quarter of a century. They both give each other their condolences, and Mr. Carson, Chris's dad, thanks him again for following through. When his mom passed away a few years back, he didn't know who would be able to respectfully give the eulogy. He also says, "We know it couldn't have been myself, considering everything we've all been through all these years." Mr. Carson asked Joel to go to the pub for a few rounds. I mean, he's in town by himself, and really it's the least that Joel can kind of do for him, for his dead friend's dad. So they head to the local dive bar and start pumping back shots at Johnny Walker. Joel opens up his mouth and tells Mr. Carson that his wife Sheila is pregnant. Funny enough, Carson remembers Sheila. She was a childhood friend of Chris's. He gives Joel, the big congratulations and finds out that they've been together for about 10 years. They're sitting there drinking for a while when Joel's composure changes. He asks Mr. Carson why he left so many years ago. Mr. Carson is kind of shocked by the question. I mean, he didn't see that coming. Carson asks him, why do you want to know? Joel lowers his head to the ground and quietly says, "Hey, I'm thinking about leaving my family." Okay, let's talk about this for a second. I'm still guessing Joel's in his 30s, about the time you start a family. Apparently his wife seems nice and supportive, but we really can't tell shit about it. She was only in the first few pages of this story anyway, so what's the deal? Why would he want to go out to the store and buy milk and never come back? The story is telling us that Joel believes his family and responsibility are stopping him from making choices that he wants to make in life. They're both bantering back and forth about it, and we find out that Mr. Carson jumped ship when Chris was about 7 years old. You can see the regret on his face at the decision he made. Joel is trying to justify the choice he made was actually correct. Then Mr. Carson drops the bomb on Joel and tells him why he left and what exactly happened to him. So basically, he went into the forest and joined a commune of hippies, of artists, musicians, and religious prophets. They basically didn't work and just did a lot of drugs and had sex with each other on a daily basis. Sounds like a great time. No responsibilities, no cares in the world, just you and nature. Joel is absolutely stunned by this. His best friend's dad got groomed for a hippie sex cult. So Joel starts to feel a little bit nauseous, from all that booze, and then runs out of the bar and barfs in a dumpster. Really classy guy here. Anyway, Mr. Carson runs out after him to find out if he's okay. Joel looks at him in shock and says, "You left your family for a commune?" And Mr. Carson tells him, "I left them for free love. I came home from work and all I would hear was Chris screaming as a baby. It was like listening to nails scratching on a chalkboard. And then as he started to get older, then there was the music. We put him in music lessons in kindergarten, and by the time he was 6, he had more talent than I had in my whole life. It was like being a father meant my life had to come to a complete stop because of him. It felt like my life was being erased from existence. So I left. One day I opened the door to go out to work and I just never made it back." Mr. Carson also tells Joel, "You're right. It was the right time, but it was the wrong choice for the wrong reasons. It's a trap out there. It looks good from the outside until you're there and there's no future for you. Every time there's an opportunity and you reach for that door, you find out it's locked. It's always locked. Look, Joel, you just gave the speech at my son's funeral. Do you think I could have done that? I can't even show my face. He didn't even want me to see him when he was alive. I'm going to tell you this. Don't bail on your wife and kid." They both hop into Mr. Carson's car so that, they can drop Joel off at home because he's in no condition to drive. Mr. Carson tells Joel that he didn't even know who his son was, what kind of person he turned out to be. He didn't even know he was sick. Maybe he could have done something. He didn't even get a chance to hug him, to tell him everything was going to be okay. In tears, Mr. Carson apologizes to Joel for having a breakdown in the car. Joel has no idea what to make of it. He wants to go out to get the milk, but he's seeing the repercussions of what can possibly happen to him. Then Joel gets this revelation. He's thinking to himself that idea is batshit crazy. But hey, what the fuck? Why not? He looks over at Mr. Carson and asks him, "What if you could hug him just one more time?" So, here's where things get a bit fucked. The scene jumps to Chris. It looks like he's alive and having a flashback, or he's dead in hell. He's laying on the floor naked with bugs crawling over his body. Then he's naked, shackled to a wooden board surrounded by skeletons tickling him with palm leaves. Then the cap of his head is being surgically removed by dog surgeons. Then he's naked and shackled to a wall. Yes, this is hell. In the darkness, he's approached by a hideous beast. The beast looks like a liquid nightmare with green eyes and the faces of its previous victims attached to its spine. An ice cream cone appears in its hand, and he hears a voice in his mind. Yes, Chris, you are in hell. You died, and now you're with me. I also like music, and well, I have a tune for you. I'm sure you'll enjoy it. Then we get a flashback of a young Mr. Carson at the front door of a house, about to leave the family. The scene repeats over and over and over again. Mr. Carson gives a reason each time, blaming the boy for abandoning his family. Each time we see the tears streaming down the child's eyes. The scene jumps back to Chris as an adult, still dead, but this time in the casket. And here we have Joel and Mr. Carson just staring down at him. So, apparently they decided in a drunken state to go back to the cemetery. The casket wasn't set to be buried yet until the morning, and they decided to pull the body out of the casket. Now we have Mr. Carson holding his dead son in his arms in shame, in tears for the years he abandoned his family. Joel is standing over him wondering if this is what he really wants in his life, or is he ready to man up and accept the responsibilities that life throws at him. The scene then jumps to a little suburban town in the Midwest. There's an ice cream truck, and there's a little girl getting a cone from our buddy Rick, the ice cream man. Rick is sweet-talking the child to make sure she doesn't drop the double scoop cone, but really we can hear him plotting a future death for this child. A car pulls up a short distance away, and a man in a black suit, cowboy hat, and boots walks up to Rick. He looks up at him and says, "Really? You're still up to this shit, Rick?" We find out from Rick that his name is Caleb. Rick looks shaken up by this visit. Caleb tells him he knows what he's been doing and to the people in this town, and he doesn't like it, and it's gonna stop now. Caleb walks away from the ice cream truck, and we can see in the distance a frightened ice cream man.
They told us not to ask questions. They said the files were corrupted, the intel classified, the case closed. But we kept digging. Welcome to Black Box Theories, where the facts don't add up, the coincidences aren't random, and the truth buried under layers of denial. Strap in, agent. You're not supposed to hear this. Theory 1. Rick is death personified. Classification: highly probable. Throughout the volume, Rick appears at moments of crisis and transformation in people's lives. He doesn't cause the suffering directly, but he's always there to witness it, like death, watching souls depart. His ability to transform objects and his knowledge of people's darkest moments suggests he's not human, but a cosmic force representing mortality itself. Theory 2. The ice cream flavors are curses. Classification: speculative. Each character who interacts with Rick receives or orders a specific flavor of ice cream that matches their doom. Byron gets chocolate with 2 scoops before his life spirals. What if each flavor Rick serves is actually a curse tailored to that person's specific weakness or fear, like a supernatural poison that brings out their worst fate? Theory 3. All stories happen simultaneously. Classification: mind-bending. The ice cream man appears in all 4 stories. But what if they're not happening in sequence, but all at once in different parts of the same town? Rick might exist outside normal time, moving through these stories simultaneously. This would explain how he seems to know everything and be everywhere. Because for him, there is no past or future. Theory 4. Caleb is Rick's brother or other half. Classification: confirmed in subtext. In issue 4, a cowboy character named Caleb confronts Rick and clearly scares him. The first time we've seen Rick show fear. The way Caleb speaks suggests they have history, possibly as brothers or opposing forces. If Rick represents death and suffering, Caleb might represent hope and life, setting up a cosmic battle between good and evil that will play out across the series. Theory 5. The Sweet Place is Rick's hell dimension. Classification: terrifying. References suggest Rick has access to another dimension where he tortures people for eternity. The junkie couple might have been transported there. Byron's parents might be trapped there. If Rick is collecting souls or suffering to feed this dimension, then everyone who encounters him risks being dragged into an eternal nightmare where their worst moments repeat forever.
Ice Cream Man Volume 1 Rainbow Sprinkles succeeds at being genuinely unsettling horror that makes you think. The anthology format allows prints to explore different types of fear and suffering without being tied to one storyline. Morazzo's art perfectly captures suburban normalcy, twisting into nightmare, and O'Halloran's bright colors creates the dissonance that makes everything feel wrong. The writing is sharp and efficient, never wastes pages or panels. Each story has real emotional weight because the characters feel like real people dealing with real problems, even when supernatural elements occur. The volume does have weaknesses that keep it from perfection. Issue 3 with Buddy the Rockstar is the weakest of the four, feeling more like an excuse for Prince to make rock music references than genuinely scary or a meaningful story. The end feels hollow compared to the gut-punch conclusions of issues 1, 2, and 4. Some readers will also struggle with how bleak these stories are. There are no happy endings here, just varying degrees of misery and loss. If you need hope or triumph in your stories, Ice Cream Man might be too dark for your taste. The anthology format, while allowing variety, also means we never spend enough time on any one character to be deeply attached to them. By the time you start caring about Byron or the junkies, their story ends and we're moving on to something new. For target audience fit, this collection is perfect for young adults or adults who enjoy horror that's more thoughtful than gory. Fans of shows like The Black Mirror, The Twilight Zone, and American Horror Story will find similar themes and tones here. Comic book readers who love anthology horror like Tales from the Crypt or supernatural mysteries like The Sandman should absolutely check this out. However, it's not for everyone. If you prefer straightforward superhero stories or need uplifting endings, just look somewhere else. The content includes drug abuse, death, decay, dread that might be too heavy for casual readers. The replay value is surprisingly high for horror. Once you know the twists and the endings, you'll want to reread it looking for clues and hints about Rick's true nature. The artwork rewards multiple readings because Morazzo packs in details you might miss the first time around. Each story also works on its own, so you can revisit your favorite issue without reading the whole volume. Compared to other horror comics, Ice Cream Man stands out for its experimental approach and willingness to try different story types. It's scarier than most superhero horror comics, but more literary than pure gore books. It sits somewhere between Gideon Falls' mind-bending mystery and Harrow County's folk horror, carving its own unique space in the genre. My personal takeaway is that this volume uses horror to examine real human fears about loss, addiction, failure, and responsibility. Rick the Ice Cream Man might be supernatural, but the suffering he observes is painfully human and recognizable. That's what makes it effective horror. We see ourselves in these doomed characters. The series' potential is enormous. Volume 1 establishes the format and introduces Caleb, Rick's nemesis, setting up a larger conflict. With over 40 issues published so far, clearly Prince and Morazzo have found an audience and plenty of stories to tell in this universe. The anthology format means that they can keep going indefinitely. For a final rating, I'm giving Ice Cream Man Volume 1 Rainbow Sprinkles an 8.5 out of 10. It's excellent horror comics, with minor weaknesses holding it back from perfection. The first and last issues are masterpieces of the genre. Issue 2 is powerful but familiar. Issue 3 is the weakest, but still somewhat interesting. Overall, this is a must-read for horror fans and anyone who wants comics that take risks and challenges expectations. I recommend buying this collection, but be warned that this will disturb you and make you think twice about ice cream trucks forever.
Some intel doesn't belong in the open. When a story gets too twisted, too dangerous, or just too damn weird, we file it under red. This is the red files, classified content, high-risk statistics, and the kind of secrets you don't unsee once exposed. Proceed with caution, Agent. Red File 1, The Deadly Spider Connection. Byron's spider Rupert is based on the Brazilian wandering spider, one of the most venomous spiders on Earth. The real spider's venom can cause a condition mentioned in the comic that is extremely painful and dangerous. Prince researched actual deadly spiders to make Byron's pet scientifically accurate and terrifying. Red File 2, Musical Character Cameos. Issue 3 features characters pulled directly from famous rock songs appearing in Buddy's fantasy world. Major Tom from David Bowie's Space Oddity, Eleanor Rigby from the Beatles song, and other legendary musical references populate this psychedelic adventure, making it a love letter to classic rock hidden inside a horror comic. Red File 3, The Artist's Eduardo Risso Influence. Critics consistently compare Martin Morazzo's art style to Eduardo Risso, who illustrated the acclaimed crime comic 100 Bullets. Both artists use thin, precise line work and excel at drawing everyday settings that feel slightly wrong. Morazzo studied Risso's techniques to develop his own distinctive style for Ice Cream Man. Red File 4, The Rod Serling Comparison. Multiple reviews compare Rick to Rod Serling, the creator and host of The Twilight Zone. Like Serling, Rick serves as narrator and observer of twisted tales with moral lessons. Prince specifically designed Rick to function as a modern horror host for anthology stories, updating the concept for contemporary comics. Red File 5, The Colorist Challenge. Chris O'Halloran had to create a bright, cheerful color palette for a horror comic, going against every instinct. Using ice cream colors like pink, yellow, and mint green makes the dark content even more disturbing. This contrast between cheerful colors and horrific content became a signature element that makes Ice Cream Man visually unique among horror comics.
All right, agents, intel has been gathered, dossiers reviewed, and it's time to declassify the best of the best. Welcome to the awards segment, where we spotlight the operatives, wildcards, and game-changing moments that made this mission unforgettable. Let's hand out some top-secret honors. Top Operative Award. Rick the Ice Cream Man absolutely steals every scene he's in. Even though he's not the main character of any story, he dominates this volume through sheer presence and mystery. Whether he's offering Byron a magical ice cream cone, watching the junkies spiral into addiction, or facing down Caleb the cowboy, Rick commands attention. His friendly demeanor hiding cosmic malevolence creates constant tension, and you can't help but watch him, even when you know you should be terrified. Martin Morazzo draws Rick with this permanent smile that's both welcoming and deeply wrong. And W. Maxwell Prince writes his dialogue with this cheerful tone that makes everything he says sound like a threat. Dark Horse Award. Caleb the Cowboy only appears for a few pages at the very end of issue 4, but he immediately makes a massive impact. While Rick has seemed unstoppable throughout the volume, suddenly this mysterious figure in all black shows up and scares Rick for the first time. The way Caleb speaks suggests he knows exactly what Rick is and has the power to stop him. This brief appearance hints at a larger mythology and gives readers hope that someone might be able to stand up to the evil Ice Cream Man, setting up what promises to be an epic conflict in future volumes. Spyglass Sequence Award. The most unforgettable scene happens in issue 1 when Detective 5V discovers the truth about Byron's house. She walks in to find Byron's parents dead for weeks, maybe months, just sitting at the kitchen table rotting. Then Rupert the spider bites her partner Briggs, and he drops dead almost instantly from the venom. The scene is horrifying because Prince and Morazzo don't flinch from showing the reality of death and decay. It's shocking and disturbing, but also tragic because we understand Byron was just a scared kid trying to survive alone. This sequence establishes that Ice Cream Man isn't going to pull its punches, and anything can happen in these pages.
Ice Cream Man Volume 1 Rainbow Sprinkles succeeds at being genuinely unsettling horror that makes you think. The anthology format allows Prince to explore different types of fear and suffering without being tied to one storyline. Morazzo's art perfectly captures suburban normalcy, twisting into nightmare, and O'Halloran's bright colors creates the dissonance that makes everything feel wrong. The writing is sharp and efficient, never wastes pages or panels. Each story has real emotional weight because the characters feel like real people dealing with real problems, even when supernatural elements occur. The volume does have weaknesses that keep it from perfection. Issue 3 with Buddy the Rockstar is the weakest of the 4, feeling more like an excuse for Prince to make rock music references than genuinely scary or a meaningful story. The end feels hollow compared to the gut punch conclusions of issues 1, 2, and 4. Some readers will also struggle with how bleak these stories are. There are no happy endings here, just varying degrees of misery and loss. If you need hope or triumph in your stories, Ice Cream Man might be too dark for your taste. The anthology format, while allowing variety, also means we never spend enough time on any one character to be deeply attached to them. By the time you start caring about Byron or the Junkies, their story ends and we're moving on to something new. For target audience fit, this collection is perfect for young adults or adults who enjoy horror that's more thoughtful than gory. Fans of shows like The Black Mirror, The Twilight Zone, and American Horror Story will find similar themes and tones here. Comic book readers who love anthology horror like Tales from the Crypt or supernatural mysteries like The Sandman should absolutely check this out. However, it's not for everyone. If you prefer straightforward superhero stories or need uplifting endings, just look somewhere else. The content includes drug abuse, death, decay, dread that might be too heavy for casual readers. The replay value is surprisingly high for horror. Once you know the twists and the endings, you'll want to reread it looking for clues and hints about Rick's true nature. The artwork rewards multiple readings because Morazzo packs in details you might miss the first time around. Each story also works on its own, so you can revisit your favorite issue without reading the whole volume. Compared to other horror comics, Ice Cream Man stands out for its experimental approach and willingness to try different story types. It's scarier than most superhero horror comics, but more literary than pure gore books. It sits somewhere between Gideon Falls' mind-bending mystery and Harrow County's folk horror, carving its own unique space in the genre. My personal takeaway is that this volume uses horror to examine real human fears about loss, addiction, failure, and responsibility. Rick the Ice Cream Man might be supernatural, but the suffering he observes is painfully human and recognizable. That's what makes it effective horror. We see ourselves in these doomed characters. The series' potential is enormous. Volume 1 establishes the format and introduces Caleb, Rick's nemesis, setting up a larger conflict. With over 40 issues published so far, clearly Prince and Morazzo have found an audience and plenty of stories to tell in this universe. The anthology format means that they can keep going indefinitely. For a final rating, I'm giving Ice Cream Man Volume 1 Rainbow Sprinkles an 8.5 out of 10. It's excellent horror comics, with minor weaknesses holding it back from perfection. The first and last issues are masterpieces of the genre. Issue 2 is powerful but familiar. Issue 3 is the weakest, but still somewhat interesting. Overall, this is a must-read for horror fans and anyone who wants comics that take risks and challenges expectations. I recommend buying this collection, but be warned that this will disturb you and make you think twice about ice cream trucks forever. So there you have it, agents. Ice Cream Man Volume 1, Rainbow Sprinkles, proves that horror comics can be literary, experimental, and absolutely terrifying all at once. If you're brave enough to face Rick and his supernatural ice cream truck, pick up this volume and experience 4 flavors of nightmares that'll stick with you a long time after you finish reading. If this briefing helped you decide whether to check out this twisted series, do me a solid favor and hit that like button. Drop a comment below telling me which issue sounds the most disturbing to you, or if you've already read Ice Cream Man, share your favorite moment from this series. And if you want more deep dives into the darkest corners of comic books, subscribe to Top Secret Inc. and hit that notification bell so you never miss a classified report. Remember, agents, in Ice Cream Man's world, every scoop comes with a price, and the flavors of misery are always in stock. Top Secret Inc., where we investigate the comics too dark for the mainstream. Stay vigilant out there and watch out for that friendly jingle coming down your street. You never know what Rick might be serving today. Lickety split, agents. Case closed.